Welcome to the 6 Miles to Supper podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Cox, and I've lost over 80 pounds with intermittent fasting 6 days a week, eating whatever I wanted at my meals, taking a cheat day every Sunday, and walking 6 miles a day. And I'm here to help you on your weight loss journey. Welcome to Season 3 of the 6 Miles to Supper podcast. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the power of a year-end review. Now, this is a powerful tool, and I highly recommend that you do one. I'm releasing this at the beginning of January, not the very first days, and I'm actually doing that on purpose because I think a lot of times what happens is we all kind of get really psyched up on January 1st, and we make a lot of, sweeping resolutions and things like that. That was my pattern, certainly, until about, I would say, 2015 or so. On the other hand, though, a year-end review I found to be just incredibly powerful. And actually, it was something that helped me to not quit at a pivotal moment in my weight loss journey. So just to kind of recap my journey, I've had enough moment with my weight in March of 2014. And, that year I was trying stuff, but I really wasn't being that scientific or anything. And I had this spreadsheet that I was measuring myself every week and taking, what I called progress photos, even though I was making no progress. When I was measuring myself, I was pulling the tape tighter every week to just try to fool myself into thinking that I was making progress. But in 2015, that was when I finally, I joined a gym and I got on the scale for the first time in years. And that was when I found out, just how high my weight had gotten. And that was in February of 2015. And so I had been in this habit of kind of collecting data since 2014. And in 2015, I worked so hard. I mean, I really what I thought was really amping up my effort. I went to the gym every day. I was doing hard workouts. I mean, pouring sweat, lifting heavy stuff. And the thing was that by the end of 2015, I was ready to give up because that year I had gone from 222.2 pounds down to about right above 200 pounds. And I was just stuck there. I was just stuck. And I had worked so hard and actually I had gotten a little bit lower than that and the weight had started to creep back up. I was a little bit above 200. And at that moment, I really was in a place where I wanted to quit. And because at the end of the year, I was expecting at the beginning of that year, I thought, oh man, I'm going to go to the gym every day and I'm going to lose 5 pounds a week and I'm going to be down to my goal weight in a couple of months and everything's going to be fine. But by the end of that year, my expectations just had not been met. I was so disappointed. I was disheartened. And I just, sat down at the end of that year and I looked at my spreadsheet and I learned something. And this was the thing that cemented in my mind the importance of doing these every year. And that was when I looked back, I started to see something. Before I thought, I've been working hard all year. I've been consistent and it's just not working. But what I saw was, because I had taken a few little notes here and there, that my efforts were not consistent. I kept quitting. I would switch around what I was doing constantly and my weight showed it. It showed up in the scale. Whenever I was on track being really consistent, the weight was coming down. But when I would quit or say, I've got to change this up now, that's when the weight started to trend back up. And that doesn't sound very profound when I say it out loud. But it was a revelation to me. It was a really a moment where I could look in black and white and see oh, there are actually, there's a cause and effect relationship here. When I'm consistent, the scale moves down. When I'm not consistent, the scale is not consistent either. And so I, kind of recommitted myself at that point, okay, 2016 is going to be a better year. And actually, it turned out that 2016 was the year that I really did. I got it under control. I committed to being consistent. It took me well into January. I think it was January 16th before I actually committed to a written plan. I actually wrote down a plan and committed to doing it consistently. But that was a year that I went, I lost about 50 pounds, and it was slow. But that was another thing that I saw, another reason that I kept quitting. When I looked at my spreadsheet, I saw that I'm just in a hurry. Like I feel like it's not working when actually it was working. It was just slower than what I was expecting it to be. So that year in review in 2015 is really what made it so that I became successful in the weight loss journey. So that's why I want to encourage you to start the practice of doing a year in review. And so in this episode, I'm going to talk about, how to actually do one, what the evolution of mine have looked like. But certainly I think you should make it your own, take your own data, whatever you're collecting and whatever your goals are, and do a review that works for you. Now, of course, the big stumbling block to doing a year in review is it can seem overwhelming. It can seem like this thing that's going to take way too long and that you don't have time for. But I'm telling you, you don't have time not to do one. You have to get in the habit on the weight loss journey of clearing out some time in your calendar, in your day, to sit down with your numbers, look over what's going on, and actually think about these things. But I get it, everybody's busy, and my life has been really busy right now too. So one thing that I do and have always allowed myself to do is to chunk it. It doesn't have to be all done on, January 1st, and it has to be all done in one sitting. Instead, in fact, I would recommend that you spread it out over a few days. Just, sit down and do it a little bit at a time, and really sit down and think about it, and have quiet in your house when you're doing these things. Instead of trying to rush it all just so you can get it done, really take your time with it. Now, if you're sitting there saying, well, yeah, I'd make time for this, but I have no data, then that is a good lesson right now. If you don't have any data to review, and you're feeling stuck, that's probably why you're stuck, because you're not collecting data. You have no way of knowing whether anything that you're doing is working when you're not collecting some sort of data. Now, for me, like I said before, I started out collecting, I would say, bad data, because, when you pull the measuring tape a little tighter and you're like fooling yourself into thinking that you lost a half an inch, I mean, that's bad data. That's garbage, right? What I have found for myself is getting on the scale and weighing yourself every day. That is if you're wanting to lose weight, that is the easiest way to see if you're losing weight. Actually, it's the only way to see if you're losing weight, really, because you can look in the mirror, but that can be a very difficult thing to judge. There are plenty of ways to kind of deceive yourself. And it's weird that we would want to deceive ourselves, but at least for me, I can definitely see in the past how I have done that to myself before. But the scale is, it doesn't tell the whole story. And it can go up and down, and water weight is certainly a thing. But what I have seen very clearly is it is a clear indication of whether or not your plan is working over the long term. So in 2014, I was doing that spreadsheet. 2015, I added my weights to it, and that helped because then that was like an objective kind of measurement. And also I added little notes. I had a column in my spreadsheet that just simply said notes. And once a week I would sit down and I would, give that little snapshot. I would, write down my weight and what I was doing at the gym and, my eating plan during that time. And then in 2016 and on, I started keeping a 7-day average tracker spreadsheet. That way I could see how my 7-day average was doing over time. And that really helped to keep me focused, and it helped to encourage me during those times when it seemed like I was going through a plateau. But I could see, when I was looking at the average, I could see that there was downward movement. It was just slower. And also, if you would like your own copy of a weight tracking spreadsheet that will calculate your 7-day average for you, you can download that on my website, 6milestosupper.com/freebies. And so you can use a spreadsheet if you are a spreadsheet person. If you're an app person, get an app that will do that for you. Anything that will help you collect data. And so as time went on in about 2018, that's when I started to finally get consistent with journaling, which, in hindsight, I wish I would have had a better journaling habit sooner. I think I probably would have lost the weight a little bit more quickly. It wouldn't have taken me quite so long to learn these things because what I have seen is when you finally start writing stuff down, whether that's in a spreadsheet or whether that's keeping track of something on an app, just any kind of record keeping, it really makes the journey easier because you're not having to guess, you're not going based on emotion, you have actual data, things in writing. And so this year, I had not only my spreadsheet, which I do continue to use and to keep track of, and I keep it updated. And by the way, if you're wondering, well, how often do you do that spreadsheet, and what should you be doing? What I like to do is, when you're actually trying to lose weight, I think it's really important to at least weekly sit down with your numbers, update your spreadsheet, kind of look over and see what's happening. Are you still moving in the right direction? Make a few notes, what's going on with yourself, like what kind of plan are you doing? Make those notes because you would be surprised how often you may change those things if you're not keeping that in front of your in the front of your mind, like you haven't ever written it down. You might be surprised at just how often you're changing on your plan. But I've been in maintenance now for a while, and what I do is about once a month, I really sit down with my numbers and look over everything just to make sure everything's going okay. Sometimes the scale can start to trend up, and when I look back over, I can see, okay, is this really a trend? How long has this trend been going on, or is this like this week it's a little bit higher than last week? You can be a little bit more loosey-goosey on maintenance, I've found, because the goal with maintenance is like lifetime lifestyle change where you're staying in a range that you feel good at, so it's a little bit more loosey-goosey than when you're really trying to make progress towards a goal weight. So what my year-end review looked like for this year was, first, I sat down with my 2020 journals. So I read every entry, and it took a little while to do that, but I'm not that verbose, so it really wasn't very long in the big scheme of things. But it was really enlightening to first of all to see, wow, what a year 2020 was, as far as the things, reading things in January and just kind of knowing what was coming in a couple of months, as far as all the freak out about COVID-19 and all the lockdown things and all that we went through, as far as just all the uncertainty and craziness. It was just interesting to kind of see that. And it was also interesting to see all the other things in life that are going on, and you sometimes you may wonder, like, man, why am I so stressed? And wow, if you journal about what's going on in your life, it can show you, like, okay, well, here are all the things that are going on right now, and you can start to understand yourself a lot better, I have found, when you keep a journal. And so I also, as I was reading through my journals, I wrote down a little recap timeline, just so I could remember from so that I didn't have to always just go back and reread the whole year, just some highlights, like this is when this happened and this is when that happened. And that was really neat to kind of see the year in kind of a condensed format. The next thing I did was I looked over my weight tracking spreadsheet, and I just, I wanted to see, like, well, okay, compared to 2019, because wow, 2020 was such a stressful year in comparison to 2019. I wanted to see, I was curious, like, well, what was my weight like? And I was really pleased to find that my weight was like within a pound on average. When I averaged up 2019 and 2020, they were like within 1 pound of each other. So I was super pleased with that. And then I just, looked and tried to see, like, okay, during those times that were, to me, the most stressful, what was my weight doing? And sure enough, those most stressful times are when my weight was at its highest, and the times when I felt the least stressed, that's when my weight was at its lowest, which, again, just cements in my mind that the scale, again, it's not a perfect tool, but it is an accurate indication for me. It's like a barometer. If the scale's going up, that tells me, despite what I may be thinking otherwise, because so many times in my journal, my weight would be trending up, but I would say, but I'm not really stressed. But then when I could step back from it, and look, in January 2021, back at, say, May of 2020, I could see with hindsight, that clarity, because you're not as emotionally connected to that time. You can see like, oh, well, this and this and this were going on. So no wonder you were stressed. You were very stressed out right then. And so you can fool yourself. You can think, well, I'm not stressed. And so this weight issue must be something different. I have found it's usually stress. So then the next thing I did was looked at my 2020 goal sheet, which, I try to make goals in all areas of my life, not just weight loss, not just the physical stuff. I also try to make goals for my finances, for, social, like relationship type things, for my spiritual / religious life. I try to make goals in all those areas. And so I looked back over my goal sheet, and then I wrote down the results, like, okay, I had this goal and here's how that turned out. And once I did that, then I was able to create my 2021 goal sheet. So again, sometimes it's kind of maybe boring, for maintenance. It's certainly not as fun, I would say, which may sound funny to you if you're currently trying to lose weight, you're not in maintenance yet. But there's something that's less exciting about having maintenance goals. It just is. It is what it is. So usually my maintenance goals stay pretty much the same. I've tweaked it a little bit this year, but basically it's the same as it was last year. And what I have found is that it's important to have goals in a lot of different areas, though, because life is what it is. And sometimes one area of your life can be kind of going kind of rough, especially, like on the weight loss journey, for example. You may be in a plateau for a while, and a plateau will break eventually if you just keep going and you keep being consistent. But it can be really tempting if that's the only goal that you have to kind of like spiral a little bit, and it can really bother you. But if you have a different goals in a lot of different areas of your life that you're striving for, I've found that it makes it easier when one area you're maybe not making as much progress in. And so the last thing I did after all of that is I sat down, just took a little bit of time and thought about what I learned. What did I learn from 2020? What are the lessons? And what can I do better based on what I've seen for last year? What can I do better going forward this year? And, also what victories did I have? I mean, I had a lot of victories too. It was a crazy year, yes, but I did have a lot of victories, and I wrote those down so that in the future I can easily look back and say, okay, these were the things that I accomplished that year. So that is how I do a year in review. I highly recommend that if you haven't done one yet, don't let that perfectionism thing happen where you think, well, I didn't do one on January 1st, and so now I can't do it. I would say it's an even better time right now, even if you're in the middle of July when you finally listen to this. Don't worry about it. Just sit down with your numbers and look back. There's something very powerful about looking at a whole year as opposed to just, a chunk of time, like a week or even a month. When you're looking at years, and I mean, really what's neat now is that spreadsheet that I have, that goal, the weight tracking spreadsheet that I had, that started in February of 2015. So I have a lot of data, years worth of data now that I can look back and visually see just how far I've come. And, the only thing that I wish really when I look back at that is it's like, man, I wish I would have weighed myself back in 2014, the day that I had enough moment. I wish I would have done that because I know I would have made better progress, faster progress. But, that's okay. I learned from it, so maybe you can not repeat my mistakes, and the weight loss journey can be easier for you. So thank you for listening to this episode. I hope your 2020 ended well and that you're ready to make 2021 the best year yet. I'll see you in the next episode. Do you want to lose the weight without getting rid of the foods you love and that you'll go back to eating again anyway? My book, The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting, teaches you how to practice intermittent fasting so that you lose the weight sustainably and keep it off for good. You can get the audiobook read by me for free when you sign up for your 30-day trial of Audible. The link is in the show notes.